Chapter 2, Changing Bodies. In 1974, at the ISKCON Center in the countryside near Frankfurt, West Germany, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada had the following dialogue with Professor Karlfried Graf von Durkheim. Professor Durkheim, a noted religious psychologist and the author of The Way of Transformation, Daily Life as a Spiritual Practice, held a PhD in analytic psychology and was renowned for establishing a therapeutic school in Bavaria,
I think, but I'm not expert on
that incorporated both Western and Eastern approaches to the psychology of consciousness. Damn, I legit want to read this.
It'd be interesting.
It actually sounds really interesting. In this conversation, Srila Prabhupada explains the first and most basic principle of reincarnation, that the spiritual living entity is different from the material body. After establishing that the conscious self and the body are separate entities, Srila Prabhupada describes how the conscious self, or soul, perpetually transmigrates to another body at the time of death.
Right before you go into Professor Durkheim, I just noticed this picture over here and has a little picture on it. I don't know if we'll be able to get the picture up or not. We'll see how well we can get a clear picture of that. Maybe we could throw it up on the screen for a second. But the quote is, "The body is really only a mental structure, somewhat like a dream, but the self is different from all of these mental structures. That is self-realization." It says page 27, so I'm wondering if maybe it's referencing something we'll read in a little bit. If so, we can jump back to it maybe, if we see something that...
Yeah, it looks...
it's a part, it's a section of the chapter.
Sweet.
All right, so beginning with their conversation.
Yep. All right. Professor Durkheim. Or I'll be Professor Durkheim. He'll read Srila Prabhupada, because it's an interview conversation. So
that way it's easy to follow.
Professor Durkheim, okay. In my work, I have found that the natural ego doesn't like to die. But if you go through it, a near-death experience, you seem to cross the threshold of death to quite a different reality.
Yes, it is different. The experience is like that of a diseased person regaining his health.
So the person who is dead experiences a higher level of reality?
It is not the person who has died, but the body. According to Vedic knowledge, the body is always dead. For example, a microphone is made of metal. When electric energy passes through the microphone, it responds by converting sound into electrical impulses, which are amplified and then broadcast over loudspeakers. But when there is no electricity in the system, nothing happens. Whether the microphone is working or not, it remains nothing more than an assembly of metal, plastic, etc. Similarly, the human body works because of the living force within. When this living force leaves the body, it is said that the body is dead, but actually it is always dead. The living force is the important element. Its presence alone makes the body appear to be alive. But alive or dead, the physical body is nothing more than a collection of dead matter. That is...
Damn.
When he breaks it down like that, it's so clear. It's just like...
It's like turning on a light bulb.
Because sometimes it's like, well, but it's like it's the same way we manipulate the material energy, the same way that our spiritual soul takes, manipulates the material body to utilize it as a vessel.
Totally. Another analogy Prabhupada will use sometimes is like a car. The car is dead. It's sitting there. It doesn't do anything. But when you get into the car and turn it on, you go somewhere, the car moves, and then you turn it off and you get out. You are still there. The car is not moving anymore.
Yeah.
It's same analogy, but it's this is one that you can really apply to your anyway.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah, it's super deep. Damn.
All right. So Prabhupada continues. The first teaching of the Bhagavad Gita reveals that the condition of the material body is ultimately not very important. I will try the Sanskrit. I'm probably going to be really bad at it, so forgive and forget if you know Sanskrit better than I do. Asochan anavasochas tvam pragnavadams cha basase gatasun agatasums cha nanusho shokanti panditaha. Yeah, that was probably about 2 of those words were right. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, whilst, this is a translation, so you don't need to understand that. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "While speaking learned words, you are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor the dead." That is Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 11. The dead body is not the real subject for philosophical inquiry. Rather, we should concern ourselves with the active principle, the principle that makes the dead body move, the soul.
How do you teach your disciples to become aware of this force, which is not matter, but which makes matter appear alive? I can intellectually appreciate that you're speaking a philosophy which contains the truth. I don't doubt it. But how do you make a person feel it?
Wow, he just said right there that he doesn't doubt it? And this is what they say he studied? That's pretty cool.
No, it is
like right off the bat, he's like, this makes too much sense for me to like argue with you on it, basically.
If you read a lot of Prabhupada's other, like, you know, especially these conversations where he's talking to scientists and, you know, doctors and whatever, what his, like, from a logical point of view, when he presents an argument, it's logically so sound. And that is why he's gotten so many people to, like, oh my God. Like, because you can't, it's hard to argue with it just on a purely logical, it's amazing. He's like, he's something else.
Yeah, it's really cool. Okay. Now this is a section that's titled "How to Perceive the Soul," and Prabhupada's replying to the question from the professor. The question being, how do you make a person actually feel this truth beyond just philosophizing about it? It is a very simple matter. There is an active principle which makes the body move. When it is absent, the body no longer moves. So the real question is, what is that active principle? This inquiry lies at the heart of Vedanta philosophy. In fact, the Vedanta Sutra begins with the aphorism, Atato Brahma Jignasa. What is the nature of the self? This is a translation again. What is the nature of the self within the body? Therefore, the student of Vedic philosophy is first taught to distinguish the difference between a living body and a dead one. If he is unable to grasp this principle, we then ask him to consider the problem from the standpoint of logic. Anyone can see that the body is changing and moving because of the presence of the active principle, the soul. In the absence of the active principle, the body neither changes nor moves. So there must be something within the body that makes it move. It is not a very difficult concept. The body is always dead. It is like a big machine. A tape recorder is made of dead matter, but as soon as you, the living person, push a button, it works. Similarly, the body is also dead matter, but within the body is the life force. As long as this active principle remains within the body responds and appears alive. For instance, we all have the power to speak. If I ask one of my students to come here, he will. He will come. But if the active principle leaves his body, I may call him for thousands of years, but he will not come. That is very simple to understand. Yes. He's never going to show up. He ain't here no more. But what exactly is that active principle? That is it's kind of like when your cell phone has not been paid, the bill has not been paid. You can call that number 1,000,000 times, you ain't going to reach that person. But what exactly is that active principle? That is a separate subject matter, and the answer to that question is the real beginning of spiritual knowledge.
Before I begin, Professor Durkheim, what I'm really starting to appreciate, that growing up in the movement, you take it for granted, or at least I did, you know. Not that I didn't believe in it and I didn't think that it was very valuable, but you don't know anything else, so you're kind of like, well, duh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
But now reading it with a more, I guess, materialized mind because of my, you know, being in the real world, you know, whatever. So I tend to kind of be more skeptical when I'm like, someone tells me something, I'm like, that sounds interesting, but I want to like verify it.
Yeah.
So now I am verifying what we grew up with.
Yeah, well, at some point you have to try to understand what you can't just because you grew up around something.
Oh, no, exactly. But it's just, it's not like in the TV shows and the movies, you always see, the Hare Krishnas, and they're just like some crazy monks on the side of the road and dressed in orange, and people just kind of dismiss it like, oh, they're wackos.
Yeah.
But you read it here, and it's like it can be presented in such a way that, like, if you are open-minded and you're intelligent, it just makes sense. At least it does to me. Not saying that it's like the only
that's why I
way
really
or
like
whatever, but it just it's. I mean, no, I've read the Bible. I have, and it doesn't answer questions that I have that I thought, well, maybe I can find and see what other religions answer these questions in a different way. Maybe I'll like that. Nope, they don't. Most of them don't even touch it. And it's like,
or at least the translations we have of them now, because the problem is a lot of these get watered down, which is another huge issue. But no, I mean, they go into really great detail. And the other thing is, I really like the fact that they recorded all these conversations, because somebody who has studied so much of it and spent his whole life studying it, basically, as like Prabhupada, is so able to actually impart the knowledge. And when you're talking to someone like a scientist, like a, professional individual who is studying life, and
they spend their whole career
they spend their whole career figuring out like psychology and matter and all this stuff, and then when they are like,
astounded, then it really
resonates.
Home,
and if you are also with that kind of person, logical person, you're like, oh, this is somebody, and you can look up these people that he talks to and go, oh, these are like legit people. It's not like some random professor that he found at some small town college and it makes it sound good. Like, you can look up these people and it's like, these are respected individuals in their field. And it's not the only, like you said, the other books too, like the other one we were reading. He has all these conversations, and that's so powerful, because it's like, they have the argument, and then he has the answer.
And he has the rebuttal. And it's
really
amazing.
Cool.
All right. Professor Durkheim continues, I can understand the point you made about the dead body, that there must be something within to make it alive. The only proper conclusion is that we are talking about two things, the body and the active principle. But my real question is, how do we become aware of the active principle within ourselves as a direct experience and not simply as an intellectual conclusion? On the inner path, isn't it important to actually experience this deeper reality?
This section is called I Am Brahman, which is spirit. I am Brahman, spirit. You yourself are that active principle. The living body and the dead body are different. The only difference is the presence of the active principle. When it is not there, the body is called dead. So the real self is identical with the active principle. In the Vedas, we find the maxim Soham, I am the active principle. It is also said, Aham Brahman Brahmasmi, I am not this material body. I am Brahman, spirit. That is self-realization. The self-realized person is described in the Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Bhutaha Prasannatma na Sochati na Kankshati. When one is self-realized, he neither hangers nor laments. Samaha Sarveshu Bhuteshu. He is equal to everyone, men, animals, all living beings.
Consider this. One of your students might say, I am spirit, but he might not be able to experience it.
How can he not experience it? He knows that he is the active principle. Everyone ultimately knows that they are not the body. Even a child knows it. We can observe this by examining the way we speak. We say, this is my finger. We never say, I finger. So what is that I? That is self-realization. I am not this body. And this realization can be extended to other living beings. Why does man kill animals? Why give trouble to others? One who is self-realized can see, here is another self. He simply has a different body. But the same active principle that exists within my body is operating within his body. The self-realized person sees all living entities with equal vision, knowing that the active principle, the self, is present, not only in human beings, but within the bodies of animals, birds, fish, insects, trees, and plants as well. Wow. I finger.
That really is
that,
actually...
Like, breaks it down so well.
I mean, I think like the vernacular of our language is something that we take so for granted that you don't even really give it much more than a cursory like, oh yeah. But that really hits it.
Yeah.
We don't, this is my this is my that, but what is that my? That's all he's saying. That my
it is the actual principle.
You inside
we are not
another way, or I don't remember the Sanskrit or whatever. The Sanskrit for it, but it's the seer, they say. So like, the doer and the seer, I think it is. Mm-hmm. So essentially, we're just like watching, we're basically kind of riding through life, watching it happen. Even when we're doing things, it's like, I don't know. It's kind of hard to describe, but when you start to think about it and really try to like, shift your consciousness there, that awareness of like,
it's awareness.
I think that's what he's kind of getting at there.
Everything
Professor
is so
Durkheim is saying like, how can they might not be able to experience it. Just taking the time to actually sit there and really think about this.
Yeah, can I experience
you are experiencing it right there.
I am.
Because...
Yeah. Just by asking that question, you are, because you are not this body.
Yeah.
But of course, we associate ourselves with the body, so there's still more layers to it, but it's that simple, and then you can begin to have a more awareness of your situation as you learn more.
So kind of like, I guess... You have to keep that as like the frame or what do they call the foundation?
Yeah.
And then
because
I think the hardest part really is like it's easy, like just like he's saying. Professor Durkheim is raising some really good points. He's saying like philosophically
great,
but then how do you actually like? And that I think just takes. I mean, God, you practice.
And yet like, he can't explain it still. It's like how how can they not explain it? It's like, but they are like just you.
I would think,
and I do like that because I feel like a lot of times people will just be like, oh well, that's just the way it is, and then it's like, okay, that doesn't explain my he's still explaining it.
No, he is.
But you have to be willing to have an open mind to the explanation, because if you weren't open minded, you would just be like, well, that's just word game. Like I feel like that you could be like, no, I'm not going to listen, which is fine, but then it's a waste of your time probably to hear it at that point if you're not willing to at least have an open mind as you're considering it, like you read the Bible, considering. It's not like, if you're going to read it with a completely closed mind, might as well not, like.
I guess the analogy I would use is you're going to anger management. You know you have an anger problem.
Right.
But yet only through time in therapy and continued practice of the tools that the therapist gives you is going to slowly reduce your anger until one day, there you are. And that's really what the path to self-realization is.
Yeah.
You have to admit you have a problem, or first you have to admit, I have a problem, I'm stuck in this body.
Yeah. I am separate from the body.
Yeah.
All right, so continuing on with Prabhupada, it's continuing here. It's separated out in the book to a new section from the I Am Brahman Spirit section to reincarnation in this life. So he just finished saying the active principle of the self is present not only in human beings, but within the bodies of animals, birds, fish, insects, trees, and plants as well. The active principle is the soul, and the soul transmigrates from one body to another at the time of death. The body may be different, but the self remains the same. We can observe this change of body even within our own lifetime. We have transmigrated from babyhood to childhood, from childhood to youth, and from youth to adulthood. Yet all the while, the conscious self, or soul, has remained the same. The body is material, and the actual self is spiritual. When one comes to this understanding, he is called self-realized.
I think we are now arriving at a very decisive moment in the Western world.
Yeah, I'll bet.
You don't say.
Like, whoa, baby.
Because for the first time in our history, people in Europe and America are starting to take seriously the inner experiences by which truth is revealed. Of course, in the East, there have always been philosophers who have known the experience by which death loses its terrifying character and becomes the threshold to a more complete life. People need this experience of overcoming their usual bodily habits.
Yeah.
And if they can break through that bodily experience, they suddenly realize that quite a different principle is operating within themselves. They become aware of the inner life. Well, that's a nice way of putting it. Because it's so easy to like get caught up in your day-to-day, like, kind of just, next thing you know, you're like, my God, like, what was I doing all day today? You totally zoned out, checked out. Like, and the crazy thing is some people, like, I mean, at least from what it, Prabhupada alludes to this, is that not everyone gets to this self-realization. And he literally just said self-realization is the idea of, or that I am not this body. Yeah. So a lot of people never even raise that question at all. And from what he's saying here, to even continue on to being aware of the inner life, you have to first raise that question. So if you're not raising that question,
for sure,
you're on autopilot. You're just kind of.
Prabhupada replies, a devotee of Lord Krishna automatically realizes that different principle, because he never thinks, I am this body. He thinks, aham brahmasmi, I am spirit soul. The first instruction given by Lord Krishna to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita is this: my dear Arjuna, you are very seriously considering the condition of the body, but a learned man does not take this material body, either dead or alive, very seriously. This is the first realization on the path of spiritual progress. Everyone in this world is very much concerned with the body, and when it is alive, they take care of it in so many ways. When it is dead, they erect grand statues and monuments over it. This is body consciousness. But no one understands that active principle which gives the body beauty and life.
Oh, man.
And at the time of death, no one knows where the real self, the active principle, has gone. That is ignorance.
During World War I, when I was a young man, oh, wow. Oh. Damn, he was in World War I. I spent 4 years at the front. Oh my God. That probably explains why he went his career path the way he did.
He wanted to understand life. He's like, what is the point of all this?
Yeah.
Wow.
I was one of 2 officers in my regiment who was not wounded. One of 2 officers in my regiment who was not wounded. Oh my God. On the battlefield, I saw death again and again. I saw people standing just next to me get hit, and suddenly their life force was gone. All that was left, as you say, was a body without a soul. But when the death was near and I accepted that I also might die, I realized that within myself was something that has nothing whatsoever to do with death.
Wow. Yes. That is self-realization. That's powerful.
And see, I think this is why he was raising that question earlier. Like, how can someone?
Yeah, how can you experience
it? He experienced it,
and he wants to know if there's like a way to get back to
share that to others,
complete understanding.
Yeah, to get back to it.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm sorry. You said yes.
Yes, that is self-realization. Okay. Yeah.
This experience of war marked me very deeply. It was the beginning of my inner path.
In the Vedas, it is said, Narayana paraha sarve na kutaschana bibhyati. If one is a God-realized soul, he is not afraid of anything.
The process of self-realization is a sequence of inner experiences, isn't it? Here in Europe, the people have gone through such experiences. In fact, I believe that this is the real treasure of Europe, that there are so many people who went through the battlefields, through the concentration camps, through the bombing raids, and within their hearts they retain the memories of those moments when death was near, when they were wounded and nearly torn to pieces, and they experienced a glimpse of their eternal nature. But now it's necessary to show people that they don't need a battlefield, to your point.
Yeah.
They don't need a battlefield, a concentration camp, or a bombing raid in order to take seriously those inner experiences when one is suddenly touched by a sense of divine reality and understands that this bodily existence is not the all in all.
We can experience that every night. When we dream, our bodies lie on the bed, but we go somewhere else. In this way, we all experience that our real identity is separate from this body. When we dream, we forget the body lying on the bed. We act in different bodies and in different locations. Similarly, during the day, we forget our dream bodies in which we traveled to so many places. Perhaps in our dream bodies we flew in the sky. At night, we forget our waking body, and in the daytime, we forget our dream body. But our conscious self, the soul, still exists, and we remain aware of our existence in both bodies. Therefore, we must conclude that we are not any of these bodies. For some time we exist in a certain body, then at death we forget it. So the body is really only a mental structure, somewhat like a dream. But the self is different from all of these mental structures. That is self-realization. That was what the picture that I read at the very beginning of this, that was what it was referencing.
Man, that paragraph is so freaking...
It's so crazy.
Oof.
I used to have such intense dreams when I was younger too.
Yeah.
And you go back to sometimes your dreams are just all over the place, but for a certain period of time, I would go back to because sometimes it's just like a twisted version of here. You can kind of tell there's supposed to be somebody's house, but it was some other place or whatever. But I would go to a whole town that was nowhere I'd ever been. Never know what and I would deal with these people that I don't deal with in real life. They weren't people I knew.
Yeah.
And it was always this whole thing that was going on, stressful. I'd wake up more stressed than when I went to bed sometimes. And then I'd come back and I'd be in this, and it really felt like I was going somewhere. Of course, not in a physical body. Your body's not traveling anywhere.
Yeah.
But like he's saying, you are doing other things. Whether you want to say it's in your mind or however you want to picture that's happening.
Yeah.
And the fact that you go back to the same place too. It's not like I was because some dreams are very frivolous-ish feeling, and then other dreams felt so real that it's what is happening?
Yeah, it's interesting because, this is a lot of ancient cultures, not just Vedic culture. They, Native Americans, etc. Many, especially the, tribal cultures that were more in touch with nature and whatever. They kind of understood this concept, and that's why they took dreams very seriously, because they understood that, there was some deeper meaning to them.
Right.
But
and then they would try to induce it using drugs to some extent and stuff like that. Yeah.
But you in the dream, while you're having that nightmare, while you're having that dream, to you right then and there, it feels just as real as you sitting right here.
Oh yeah.
So it's,
do you fly in your dreams?
I actually, you know what? When I was younger, I used to have more dreams of flying.
Yeah.
And I just had a really weird dream the other night when we were down visiting my brother, and I started to tell Shar about it. It was one of those dreams that was super vivid. You wake up and you're like, "This is so crazy! I need to tell someone about it." And literally, by the time I started telling Shar, it was trying to hold sand, and it just. And all I remember, there was a lot of climbing in it. I was climbing Mount Everest. Or something very similar to it. And I had, at one point, I had Veda or Shruti with me, and I had him in my, on my back, and we were just, climbing up this damn mountain. And then it shifted, and there was, another part where I was, on the roof of the car with someone else, and it was going down the road, and then, we're just, oh, wow, this is so cool. And then next thing I know, I'm wait a second, I'm the one that was driving the car. And then as soon as I realized that, the car started swerving all over the road, and we're on the roof now, and I'm ah! and it just kept snapping from, thing to thing to thing, and I'm ah! And, yeah, it was just really, I don't know.
Wow. Yeah, I have dreams sometimes about flying, but it's interesting because Papa was talking about how he flies. My granddad was talking about how he flies in his dreams. Mm-hmm. But he talks about he just kind of there, and he just lifts up and he just smoothly floats around. But in my dreams when I fly, I have to almost I'm running on a bike or something, my legs, and then I can control the elevation by how fast I move my legs. It's this whole thing that I have to do.
That's funny.
But it was funny because I was saying that, and then my grandmother, Mammy, she was that's how I fly in my dreams. She was
really?
I have to do this,
You have to work for it.
You have to work for it.
Like a bird
Papa's
flapping.
just there like a yogi, just going places with the power of his mind. For some reason, this is bugging me. I'm worried that maybe it's rubbing. I don't think it is, but it's I'm going to keep getting distracted by it if I don't
I'm going
move
to have to try to pay attention.
Yeah. It's interesting, though, all the things that we get up to in our dreams, the oddities.
Yeah.
But Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, text 42, Indriyani paranyarhor, indriyabhyaha paramanaha, manasastu parabudhir yo buddheha paratastu saha. I am reading that right. The H with the dot underneath of it is a ha at the end, or am I wrong about that? Is that sa? Tu sa or tu saha?
Tu sa.
It is just sa? The dot underneath doesn't mean ha? Nama. It's been so long since I've read Sanskrit properly, and I'm feeling like such a complete nonsense.
Although the more I read it, the more it kind of comes back to me.
I think you're right. It is just ah. What is there is one that means aha though, and I think I'm mixing two up.
Finding depending on which, like how the verse is structured.
Yeah.
There's different tunes, and if you sing it in the right tune,
then it kind of
even
makes
if your
sense.
Pronunciation is bad, it helps because the words flow in the meter.
Paranyarhor. What is this tune? Can you do it better than I'm doing it?
Indriyani paranyarhor, indriyabhya param.
Manaha.
So the parangs mana. Manasastu parabudhir yo budhe paratastu sa. Yeah.
Indrayani paranyarhor, indrayvaya paramana, manasastu parabudhir, yo budhe paratastu sa.
Yeah, there you go.
Interesting.
Yeah, if you
it's
do
been
it,
so long
if
since I
you
did
sing
that.
it, that's why they write them in the verses. It just
it makes more sense, especially if you kind of remember a little bit of what the amount of verses we used to memorize, and now I know nothing.
Yeah, I know.
This is a translation. The working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind. And he, aka the soul, is even higher than the intelligence.
Earlier today, you spoke about the false ego. Did you mean that the real ego is the soul?
Yes, that is the pure ego. For instance, now I have this 78-year-old Indian body, and I have this false ego that thinks, I am Indian. I am this body. This is a misconception. Someday, this temporary body will vanish, and I'll get another temporary body. It's just a temporary illusion. The reality is that the soul, based on its desires and activities, transmigrates from one body to another.
Can consciousness exist apart from the material body?
Yes. Pure consciousness, the soul, does not need a material body. For instance, when you dream, you forget your present body, but you still remain conscious. The soul, the consciousness, is like water. Water is pure, but as soon as it falls from the sky and touches the ground, it becomes muddy.
Yes.
Similarly, we are spirit souls. We are pure, but as soon as we leave the spiritual world and come in contact with these material bodies, our consciousness becomes covered. The consciousness remains pure, but now it is covered by mud, aka this body. And this is why people are fighting. They are wrongly identifying with the body, thinking, I am German, I am English, I am American, I am Indian, I am black, I am white, I am this, I am that. Starting to sound like Dr. Seuss. So many bodily designations. These bodily designations are impurities. That is why artists sculpt or paint nude figures. In France, for example, they regard nakedness as pure art. Similarly, when you understand the nakedness or true condition of the spirit soul without these bodily designations, that is purity.
Why does it appear to be so difficult to understand that one is different from the body?
It is not difficult. You can experience it. It is only because of foolishness that people think differently. But everyone really knows, I am not this body. This is very easy to experience. I am existing. I understand that I have existed in a baby's body. I have existed in a child's body, and also in a boy's body. I have existed in so many bodies, and now I am in an old man's body. Or, for example, say you have now put on a black coat. The next moment you may put on a white coat, but you are not that black or white coat. You have simply changed coats. If I called you Mr. Black Coat or Mr. White Coat, that is my foolishness. Similarly, in my lifetime, I have changed bodies many times, but I am not any of these bodies. This is real knowledge.
And yet, isn't there a difficulty? For instance, you may have already intellectually understood very well that you are not the body, but you may still have the fear of death. Doesn't that mean you didn't understand it by experience? As soon as you've understood by experience, you should have no fear of death, because you know that you can't really die.
Experience is received from a higher authority, from someone who has higher knowledge. Instead of my trying to experience for years and years that I am not this body, I can take the knowledge from God or Krishna, the perfect source. Then I have experienced my deathlessness by hearing from a bona fide authority. That is perfect.
Yes, I understand.
Therefore, the Vedic instruction is tad vijnartam sa gurum eva bigachet. In order to get first-class experience of the perfection of life, you must approach a guru. And who is a guru? Whom should I approach? I should approach someone who has heard perfectly from his guru. This is called disciplic succession. I hear from a perfect disciplic succession, right? I hear from a perfect person, and I distribute the knowledge in the same way, without any change. That's really important. Like I was saying earlier about how you don't know how people translate books and stuff.
Yeah.
That's what the trouble is with a lot of these, is that they've been watered down in some way or another.
Yeah, for sure.
And I distribute the knowledge in the same way without any change. Lord Krishna gives us knowledge in the Bhagavad Gita, and we distribute the same knowledge without changing it.
That's interesting, because here he is saying without changing it, with, change without change.
Yeah.
And it's no different than the body and the soul.
Yeah, the soul doesn't change.
Soul doesn't change.
So the message,
so essentially,
the true
that's
knowledge.
What this is. So when he, refers to it as spiritual knowledge, it's not just spiritual knowledge because it's about spiritual things. It's spiritual because it's unchanging. The message is, it is as applicable as it is 5,000 years ago as it is today. And it's like, ooh.
Yeah, that is. Speaking of not changing it, Bhagavad Gita is the, kind of like the Bible-ish of like what a religion. But it is important to note, if someone's listening to this and leaves out before this gets mentioned somewhere else, Bhagavad Gita as it is the translation that is the purest. Whereas there are other versions of Bhagavad Gita that someone else who studied Sanskrit has translated, but the translations are quite different in some parts of it, and it's
some
more
of them
clear that
some of them are good, but
it's
the
coming
problem
from
is
their interpretation of words.
Like he says right here, it's not coming from disciplic succession.
Yeah, not coming from a really
so
well-learned spiritual
it has those people's
teacher.
own spin on it.
Right.
Prabhupada does. If you read the Bhagavad Gita, which I'm in the middle of reading again now, he does the Sanskrit.
He does the purport.
He does the translation. And the translation is
direct.
And, granted, the translations can be open, if you're like a Sanskrit scholar, the translations could be open to like some slight variation, like when describing something.
Right.
But then that's what, then he has his purport. And the purport is him explaining the message of intent behind the verse.
Right. Which he learned from his teacher, and he learned from his teacher like that, which is what he's just talking about here, this disciplic succession.
It's my turn. Over the past 20 or 30 years, there has been a great awakening of interest in spiritual topics in the western part of the world. But on the other hand, if the scientists want to eliminate the human self, they are well on the way to doing it with their atomic bombs and other technical innovations. If they want to guide humanity to some higher goal, however, then they have to stop looking at man in a materialistic way through their scientific spectacles. They must look at us as we are, conscious selves.
The goal of human life is self-realization or God-realization, but the scientists do not know that. Modern society is presently led by blind and foolish men. The so-called technologists, scientists, and philosophers do not know the real aim of life, and the people themselves are blind as well. So we have a situation in which the blind are leading the blind. If a blind man tries to lead another blind man, what type of results can we expect? Oh, God.
I just have
a vision of like
vision of a whole line of blind men with their canes.
Old school like, Charlie Chaplin just like bumbling into stuff. Oh, man.
Not knocking blind people.
No, not at all. But it's just like, you know, they can't, they don't have the visual, they're visually impaired.
Yeah,
you know, no, this is not the process. One must approach a self-realized person if he wants to understand the truth. At this point, it says more guests have entered the room. So what, we have disciples now as well?
There's a disciple, yeah. I guess I'll...
You can read for the disciple as well and just differentiate? Okay.
Yeah. So this is a disciple, not...
A student of Srila Prabhupada.
Yeah. Srila Prabhupada. These gentlemen are professors of theology and philosophy. I guess he's introducing
Oh, goodness.
himself. And this is Dr. Dara. He is the leader of a society for the study of yoga and integral philosophy here in Germany. Srila Prabhupada greets them and the conversation resumes. Professor Durkheim. May I ask another question? Isn't there another level of experience that opens the door to some deeper consciousness for the common man?
Yes, that experience is described by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 13. That's the other thing. He pulls these, like, he knows every single verse by heart and can pull it out. I'm like, I can't even imagine. Like, even if it wasn't a spiritual teaching, that's a bona fide.
Yeah, oh no, I mean, dude, and he does that,
by
like,
heart.
You listen to his lectures, and it's not like he builds one lecture around one or two quotes.
Somebody brings up a question, and he goes, oh, that's the answer here. And it's like another book that he doesn't have that's just like...
Blam! Like...
The level of intelligence
it would take me,
so
if someone
high.
asked me these questions, I'd be sitting there doing hours of research to sit there and come up with the quotes. But that's why it's important to read, so that when someone asks you questions...
like the question I had the other day that I was talking to you about from work, and I'm like, I didn't have... Now, not to say I had a general idea, you know, like I can kind of explain where it's coming from and what I believe, but I also had to say, I'm not well-versed enough to be able to just give you... Whereas if Prabhupada had gotten a question like that, he would have been like, here's 7 verses. Here's what they mean. Here's the interpretation. He's like, it's just like this, and that is that.
For sure.
It's amazing.
Yeah. No,
so
this is what made me realize, like, I need to read, not because I want to be able to whip out verses like that, but just because, like,
because we're searching for information.
We're searching for information, and like, think about it, right? Coronavirus is happening.
Yeah.
When you go on TV and you're interviewing a doctor from the World Health Organization, if that doctor couldn't pull facts out of his ass, right then and there, how authoritative would he sound on live TV?
Right.
You would be like, well, what are you doing? But if he was having to, hold on one second, let me, I have a spreadsheet here. But when you can just drop facts and facts and facts, and then someone who's sitting, watching or listening, I want to verify those facts, and looks it up, and they're like, oh, damn, man, they were right on.
Yeah.
You're going to give, that person now has a whole ton more credibility.
Yeah.
To it, you know, maybe you don't necessarily believe what they say, but you're at least sure as hell going to listen, because you're, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. We're running on 50 minutes. We should probably keep these to an hour if we can. We've got about 5 more pages. So let me read this verse from Bhagavad Gita, and we'll continue.
Okay.
Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 13. Dehinosmin yata dehe komarom yavanam jara tata dehantara praptir diras tatra namoyati. It does make it a lot easier.
Rattle it off like a pro.
Yeah. It makes it way easier when you sing it.
Yeah.
As the embodied soul continually passes in this body from childhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. That was the translation. Okay. But first, one must understand the basic principle of knowledge, that I am not this body. When one understands this basic principle, then he can advance to deeper knowledge.
It seemed, this is Professor Durkheim still.
I think it's going to mostly be him. We'll specify if it's not Prabhupada or Durkheim, and then we'll just read otherwise. Because I think they only interrupted like very briefly.
It seems to me that there is a big difference between the Eastern and Western approaches to this problem of body and soul. In the teachings of the East, you have to become free of the body, whereas in Western religions, a person tries to realize the spirit within the body.
This is very easy to understand. We have heard from the Bhagavad Gita that we are spirit, that we are within the body. Our sufferings come about because of our identification with the body. Because I have entered into this body, therefore I am suffering. So either Eastern or Western, my real business should be how to get out of this body. Is that point clear?
Yes.
The term reincarnation means that I am a spirit soul who has entered a body. But in my next life, I will enter another body. It may be a dog's body, it may be a cat's body, or it may be a king's body. But there will be suffering, either in the king's body or in the dog's body. These sufferings include birth, death, old age, and disease. My granddad just told me the other day that he said he's heard that I think it's a lot of us have heard, but that birth is more painful than death in most cases. And that he's like, that doesn't give me much hope for my future.
I mean, depending on what kind of way you
depending
die,
on how you go. But I think
sure,
in general, birth is very painful.
I can't
even
imagine getting, I mean...
It's probably why you can't remember it. It's traumatic as all get out. You don't want to remember that. Imagine it. I meant remember. I don't know why I said imagine.
I mean, that's...
Yeah, I mean, don't need to imagine it. It happened.
And babies be screaming when they come out. It can't be pleasant.
It's really weird. Is that apparently I didn't cry.
Really?
Yeah, apparently I came out. My mom said my head was about this far out of her, and I opened my eyes and I was looking around the room like checking it out, and I didn't cry. God. I came out and I was just like checking out the situation. Like I was just like, where am I?
I'm here again.
Right? My soul was like, where in? I thought I wasn't coming back. And then, but I wasn't upset. Like she said, I wasn't crying. I wasn't. And she's like, wow. Funny. And then she said it gave her a real false idea of what it's like to have kids, because then all my siblings. We're also all obviously different temperament just in life, like we all are. They're more in touch to some extent with how they're feeling and things, which is better in some cases. But just interesting that even at birth, the difference, which is another thing, like you've had no time to develop a personality, and yet you're different at birth than another baby would be.
That's true. Yeah.
I didn't even thought about that until just now. Damn. But we're all different. Children are different, right?
Making me think.
Woo. All right, where was I? Okay, so these sufferings include birth, death, old age, and disease. So, in order to abolish these four kinds of suffering, we have to get out of the body. That is man's real problem. How to get out of this material body.
This takes many lives.
It can take many lives, or you can do it in one lifetime. If you understand in this life that your sufferings are due to this body, then you should inquire how to get out of the body. And when you get that knowledge, you will know the trick, how to get out of the body immediately.
And I think when he says immediately, he means like immediately as in like after this life. Right.
Yeah, I'm assuming that that's what he's talking about, but I mean, if one were, you never know. Maybe because they talk about some sages that just decide I'm leaving my body now, like Yoda and Star Wars. Yoda, he's just like it's my time, and he's gone. Sure. Now, I don't know about the body disappearing. That's a whole other thing. That's like Star Wars-y, but like I know you could leave your body probably if you got to that. To that place.
Yeah, you get to the...
I'm not saying many people get there, but in theory...
Not today, my God.
I think when the body starts to break down, it becomes a lot easier for you to abandon it because you kind of have to, versus when you just decide that you're going to like separate from it permanently. Yeah. I think that's something that's may not even be super possible anymore. I don't know all the ins and outs of these things. But yeah, he's definitely... I would assume he's talking about what you were saying.
Okay. But that doesn't mean that I have to kill the body. Oh, that doesn't mean that I have to kill the body, does it? Doesn't it mean that I realize my spirit is independent from my body?
There you go. We should have just kept reading. No, it isn't necessary that the body be killed. But whether your body is killed or not, someday you will have to leave your present body and accept another one. That is nature's law, and you cannot avoid it.
It seems that there are some points here which are in accordance with Christianity.
It doesn't matter whether you're a Christian, Muslim, or Hindu. Knowledge is knowledge. Whatever knowledge is available, you must pick it up. And this is knowledge. It's like money. Money is money. You see money, you gotta get it. And this is knowledge. Every living being is imprisoned within a material body. This knowledge applies equally to Hindus, Muslims, Christians, everyone. The soul is imprisoned within the body and must therefore undergo birth, death, old age, and disease. But we all want to live eternally. We want full knowledge. We want full blissfulness. To attain this goal, We must get out of the body. This is the process.
Now Professor Dara...
This is one of the other... He's the yoga one, I think?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, okay.
You stress the point that we must get out of the body, but shouldn't we accept our existence as human beings?
Well, we got some kids not accepting their existence as human beings next door. But hopefully they're not too loud on the mics. You propose so in response, Prabhupada says, you propose accepting our existence as human beings. Do you think that existing within this human body is perfect?
No, I don't say it is perfect, but we should accept this and not try to create some ideal situation.
So you admit that your condition is not perfect. Therefore, the correct idea should be to discover how to become perfect.
But why do we have to become perfect as spirit? Why can't we become perfect as humans? This guy clearly is not as bright. Either that or he's asking the question.
Well, I mean, this is a good question, though, because these are the things that, like, when you're talking to people that aren't familiar, they're like, well, why not?
Or I shouldn't say he's
why shouldn't I enjoy? Why shouldn't I?
Professor Durkheim seems much more receptive, whereas he seems to like.
Well, like he said that he's had the realization fully.
Yeah. No, of course, because of the war.
I think he's at a different place in his understanding for sure. I agree. So Prabhupada replies to why can't we become perfect as humans? You have already admitted that your situation within this human body is not perfect. So why are you so attached to this imperfect situation? Goodness, it's like when you attach to that old car that just keeps breaking down and you just need to get rid of it.
Yeah. Our Jetta.
The old Jetta.
God. This body is an instrument through which I can communicate with other people.
That is also possible for the birds and beasts.
But there is a big difference between the talking of birds and beasts and our talking.
What is the difference? They are talking in their community, and you are talking in your community. And this is back to Professor Durkheim.
Man,
that's really good.
He shuts him down so shuts him down in a bad way, but it's he answers the question so clearly, and it's like.
Because if somebody asked me that, I might not know how to answer that. Yeah. But he's just like, it's very basic. You boil it down to the simplest thing, and then you go. That's it. Wow.
Keep it simple, stupid.
Really, seriously, this is amazing.
I believe the real point.
This is back to Durkheim. Yeah.
I believe the real point is that the animal has no self-consciousness. He does not understand what he is in essence.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. Srila Prabhupada replies, yes, that is the real point. A human being can understand what he is. The birds and beasts cannot understand. So, as humans, we should endeavor for self-realization and not simply act on the level of the birds and beasts. So it's kind of continuing, I mean, it's kind of obvious probably, but he's kind of continuing the answer to Dara here because he's saying because Dara was saying, like, you know, we might as well make the best of a bad situation.
Yeah.
You know?
And he's saying, you are right, but...
He's saying that, you know, when you're a bird and beast, you have no choice but to make the best of a bad situation. Yeah. As a human, you have the opportunity to possibly do better.
Not that he was right, but...
To say that...
He was right to say that, like, you should be attached to being... Not attached to being a human being.
You should be aware that you are human.
It's a gift.
You're in a human body.
Because we have the ability.
But it's a gift because you have the ability to think further, whereas most forms of life, they're stuck in that form. That's all they know.
Yeah.
No ant is sitting there thinking about the soul. At least, well, no ant nowadays on some of these stories, but generally no. Or probably ever really no. I think those are just mainly to make a point when they make those stories.
What? For the little thumbnail, you could get someone to draw an ant sitting there doing yoga. That would be awesome. Oh my God,
that'd be cool. That is cool. I like that.
Oh God.
Yes. If somebody wants to draw an ant, we'll probably already have it by this point, but just in case. Never know. Maybe the one person that watches this will be like, I'll draw an ant.
Ant doing yoga.
Doing yoga, specifically, yeah. Okay. Srila Prabhupada says, okay, I'm just going to start over. Yes, that is the real point. A human being can understand what he is. The birds and beasts cannot understand. So as humans, we should endeavor for self-realization and not simply act on the level of the birds and beasts. Therefore, the Vedanta Sutra begins with the aphorism, Attato Brahma Jignasa. Jignasa. Yeah. Human life is meant for inquiring about the absolute truth. That is the aim of human life, not eating and sleeping like the animals. We possess extra intelligence with which to understand the absolute truth. In Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 1, or book 1, or what is it, Canto 1. They call it Canto 1, but it's basically book, kind of like book 1. Chapter 2, verse 10. It is said, Kamasya nendriya pritir, labho jiveta yavata, jivasya tattva jignasya nirto yaschaha karma bihi. Yeah, it's not so good.
The Bhagavatam.
It's a different.
Most of the Bhagavatam verses have a slightly different meter than the Bhagavad Gita, which you did.
At the end, I figured it out, but the first two were pretty bad.
I have the same problem when I'm reading Bhagavad Gita verses. I'm not good at carrying a tone. Then switching up, I get like.
Yeah, I'm not. Or tune, I'm not tone. Well, I think my tone is not great, but I think my tune is where I really struggle. Just in general, what to speak when I'm doing stuff like this. Okay, so the translation. Life's desires should never be directed toward sense gratification. One should desire only a healthy life or self-preservation. Since a human being is meant for inquiry about the absolute truth, nothing else should be the goal of one's works.
Professor Dara, but is it just a waste of time to use our bodies to do good to others?
You cannot do good to others because you do not know what good is. Ooh. It's like help. It's kind of like on the plane. They tell you put your own mask on before you try to put someone else's mask on. You can't help anybody if you're not there anymore. You are thinking of. Okay, so he continues. You are thinking of good in terms of the body, but the body is false in the sense that you are not the body. For instance, you might occupy an apartment, but you are not that apartment. If you simply decorate the apartment and forget to eat, can that be good? Woo! No, probably not.
Dara, I would love
Wow, this is
I know
crazy.
there's
this
a lot
guy
of audio recordings.
Like 50 years ago.
I know, man.
Can you believe that? Like you could have sat and talked to him like this.
The beautiful thing is on YouTube,
there's so much.
You can listen to so many of his lectures.
The only problem is it can be difficult for people to understand because he does have a thick accent.
An accent. Because I lived in India for so many years as young. Yeah. I hear him and it
makes sense.
I
can understand.
But the one YouTube channel that I found. They have the transcription or subtitles whatever so you can read along with
transcript.
A transcript
But that is really helpful because I can understand most of it, but every now and then I'm like, what did he say? And it's much easier if you read. And then if you did that for a while,
because I'll
screenshot
them too because I'm like, ooh, that's a really nice quote, and you can screenshot.
And it's right there. I think that I'm sure if you watched a bunch of those videos and got into it, then when you were listening to him without a video, you'd probably understand him better too.
Professor Dara, I don't think this comparison of the body with a room is very good.
That's because you don't know that you are not the body.
Man. But if we go out of a room, the room remains. When we go out of the body, it doesn't remain.
Eventually, the room will also be destroyed. This is true. You leave just like the body decomposes. Because first of all, the body doesn't vanish. It's not like Star Wars. The body doesn't vanish. The body's there. It's dead for a while.
Or it turns into
the room stays. It slowly gets destroyed. Yeah. Good point. All right, Professor Dara.
What I meant to say is that there must be a very intimate connection between the body and the soul. A kind of oneness, at least, as long as we are alive.
No, that is not real oneness. There is a difference. For instance, the room we are presently in is important to me only as long as I am alive. Otherwise, it has no importance. When the soul leaves the body is thrown away, even though it was very dear to its owner.
But what if you don't want to leave your body? I don't think you have a choice.
I must say, you need to ask some people in them graveyards if they had a choice about it. It is not a question of what you want. You must leave. Just to be clear, because I kind of ran right into it. Srila Prabhupada's answer begins with, it is not a question of what you want. You must leave. As soon as your death comes, your relatives will throw out your body.
Professor Durkheim, perhaps it makes a difference if a person thinks, I am the spirit and I have a body, rather than I am the body and I have a soul. Ooh.
Yes.
Just switch it up.
That's a very good point. Yes, it is a mistake to think that you are the body and possess a soul. That is not true. You are the soul and you are covered by a temporary body, so they're agreeing here. The soul is the important thing, not the body. For example, as long as you wear a coat, it is important to you, but if it becomes torn, you throw it away and purchase another coat. The living being constantly experiences the same thing. You separate from this present body and accept another body. That is called death. The body which you previously occupied becomes unimportant, and the body you now occupy becomes important. That is the big problem. People give so much importance to a body that within a few short years will be exchanged for another one. And that is the end of Chapter 2 That is something we already read. So actually, it's something that's coming up. So we won't read that yet.
Oh man, that was
That is
heavy.
good.
Woo!
That's really good.
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. I think we got to a good place. We're right about an hour, I think, give or take a few, because we started recording before we actually started. So
yeah. And you could probably cut out some in the beginning.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
Yep.